Eskel. A skilled witcher in his own right, is Geralt's closest childhood friend. According to Vesemir, their tutor at the time, they resembled each other like brothers so much that he couldn't even tell them apart, like two drops of water. One of the only, rather strange differences was their touch. A witcher's touch produces a pleasant, piercing vibration, and Eskel's touch was rather more powerful than Geralt's. They grew up together in the Witcher's Keep of Kaer Morhen, getting into mischief whenever they thought they could get away with it, like tying a bumblebee to a jug with a thread. Unfortunately for them, they didn't get away with it that time. Vesemir caught them and tanned their hides with a leather strap. Even as they grew up, the two Witchers would still constantly poke fun at each other at every opportunity. All in good fun, of course.
Bit of exercise will do you good.
Huh?
Well, you've rounded out a bit. Still got some of last winter's blubber on you.
Speak for yourself, funny bunny.
Like most other Witchers, Eskel was taken from his parents at a very young age, likely through the law of surprise as usual. As such, he didn't remember much of his past life. The only thing he knows about his mother is that she would sometimes sing him an old hill folk tune that, according to Eskel, is perfect for hiking. So I suppose one can infer from this that Eskel was likely born in a hilly area, which doesn't really narrow it down.
The old hen, she cackled on the fence. The old hen, she cackled, and she ain't cackled since.
When Eskel set off on the path, he had plenty of adventures of his own. Once he found himself in the dark woods, where he ran across a knight in trouble, attacked by wolves. After saving said knight, Eskel decided to invoke the law of surprise. Give me what you find at home. But the knight did not find a child when he returned home. Instead, his mare had just foaled, granting Eskel a young, purebred Kedweni stallion, which he named Scorpion, bound to him by fate itself. Another time, he had a man request his aid in the capture of a Samovilla. The peasant had escaped said Samovilla before, but instead of being happy that he had escaped at all, he had fallen in love with her. Eskel thought he was crazy, of course, and turned down the contract. So the man tried to go after her himself with a fishing net. Should have probably listened to the Witcher on this occasion. One contract he was quite proud of, however, was a Katakan contract. The vampire in question preyed on young women from the upper classes. So Eskel's client threw a masquerade ball for the city's most notable families in an effort to lure the vampire out of hiding. Eskel would be there, wearing a mask of course, biding his time. Something Eskel enjoyed particularly because no one could see his scars while he was wearing a mask, resulting in wild success with the ladies. Although they probably still didn't quite live up to the time he sniffed a bunch of fistek and slept with a succubus. And speaking of fistek, Eskel's plan to bait the vampire properly involved quite a bit of it. He'd hired a young alchemist who would ingest every ounce of fistek, vodka, and magical mushroom she could possibly get her hands on. And then she'd wait for the Katakan to pounce, which he did soon enough. After drinking her drug-infused blood, the creature fell into a stupor himself, of course, providing an easy kill for Eskel. This Katakan was particularly large and strong, however, so the Witcher was quite pleased with himself, even taking to an autopsy of the beast afterwards. One winter, at Kaer Morhen, his brother Geralt brought home a little girl, Ciri. Ciri, who, when she first saw Eskel, was terrified of the man, thinking he wasn't human because no human could have a face like his. You see, another thing Witchers pick up on the trail quite often are, as mentioned earlier, scars. And Eskel had a rather horrific one, right across his face, which he rubbed often. Not to mention that his voice sounded menacing enough, which was rather misleading, of course. Eskel was a kind man, and when he eventually smiled at her, Ciri's fear abated altogether. From then on, Eskel did his best to raise Ciri alongside the rest of the Witchers at the keep, training her in sword fighting and teaching her about monsters. However, when Triss eventually came to Kaer Morhen to help them figure out what exactly was going on with Ciri, she immediately reprimanded the Witchers for being entirely awful at raising a little girl. Not too surprising, of course. During her tirade, Eskel approached her, bent down before her on one knee, took her hand, and kissed it. He begged Triss for help in raising Ciri. As Triss agreed, from then on, Eskel and the other Witchers tried their very best at raising the little girl according to her instructions. Eskel, like everyone else who met her, became attached to Ciri quite a bit, often eyeing Lambert in annoyance when he said something insensitive again, as he was wont to do. Although he did get along with Lambert well enough once he had learned not to talk to him about certain things. Sadly, after Ciri left the keep, he wouldn't see her again until she was a grown woman. During The Witcher 1, Eskel helps defend the keep against an attack aimed at stealing the Witcher's secrets kept there, and when they are stolen in the end, he sets off to try and find them too. Following that, in The Witcher 3, the Witchers had banded together to figure out where Ciri was. A very serious matter, of course, that was only sometimes interrupted by Eskel and Lambert's talk of how much they don't like Yennefer and sorceresses in general. Oh, and a lot of drinking to pass the time.
Fuck yeah! Summon the bitches!
When they did find Ciri and she finally returned to Kaer Morhen to await an attack from the Wild Hunt, Eskel immediately agreed to aid in the fighting, of course. But when Vesemir fell in battle that day, Eskel decided to finally leave Kaer Morhen, his old home, for good. And so he set off on the path once more, never to return.
I'm sure you're not surprised, but we're not doing skits at the end cards today either. I am so sorry. My Patreons are getting titles today. I hope you appreciate those too. Walguy the Illustrious, Robertson the Enlightened, Lochmoine the Fierce, MJ Coolsta the Impressive, Septic the Cattist, Mike Zweers the Unrelenting, Adrian Peckle the Impeccable, Ray the Fortuitous, Freeman the Wise,